The day Greg Dalton's Harley sputtered to a smoky death on the side of a forgotten Louisiana road, he didn't know his life was about to split in two. Before Maya and after Maya. Greg was 44, CEO of Dalton Infrastructure Group, a name that held weight from Houston to D.C., the kind of guy who usually solved problems with 3 phone calls and a golf invitation. But out here, his $60,000 0-cents motorcycle was a useless heap. And there wasn't a cell signal from Maya, just heat, silence, and the crunch of gravel under his boots. Then he heard a voice, small, sharp, almost out of place in the heavy southern air. "Your engine's toast, mister." Greg turned. There she was, a little black girl no more than 9, standing like she owned the road, holding what looked like a rusted-out metal box turned toolbox. Her overalls were too big, her curls were wild, her shoes didn't match, but her eyes, those eyes, held something fierce, something ancient. "You know about motorcycles?" Greg asked, trying to keep the disbelief out of his voice. He gave him a look. "My name's Maya. I fix things." She didn't wait for permission, just crouched beside the engine and started poking at the carburetor with the confidence of a seasoned mechanic. Greg knelt beside her, trying to keep up. "Where'd you learn this?" "My mama," she said without looking up. "Before she passed, she told me a woman should never wait around for someone else to fix things." The sentence hit Greg like a baseball bat to the ribs. There was something hauntingly familiar about this child, her cadence, her strength, the way she said mama like it was still a sacred word. And then he saw it. A bracelet. Not just any bracelet. Silver. 3 tiny daisy charms. Greg had only given that bracelet to one person in his entire life, Carmen Brooks. 15 years ago, she was the love of his life. They were reckless, passionate, and totally unprepared for what the world would throw at them. He was a white man trying to lead a conservative company in a conservative town. She was a brilliant black artist with no interest in hiding. The relationship ended the way fire ends, violently, painfully, and full of smoke. He had caved. She had begged. And then she was gone. Now here was this girl, wearing that bracelet. "Where'd you get that?" he asked, pointing. Maya shrugged. "My mama gave it to me. Said it was from someone who loved her once." But he didn't have the courage to love her out loud. Greg's world spun. "What was your mama's name?" "Carmen Brooks." She said it like it meant nothing, like it wasn't the name that had haunted him for over a decade. Carmen, who had died of pneumonia 2 years ago, alone. And now, her daughter was here. On the side of a road, fixing his damn motorcycle. "Maya," he started, but didn't know where to go. The words tangled in his throat. He couldn't say, "I'm your father," yet, not like this. Not when she was still tightening bolts like her life depended on it. "Done," she said proudly. The bike gave a healthy cough, then purred, but before he could say more, the thunder of tires broke the moment. A truck, dusty, dented, and angry, rolled up. A man stomped out, red-faced and sweating through his shirt. "Maya!" he bellowed. "You were supposed to be cleaning rooms, not fixing junk for strangers." The man, David, Big Tom, Davison, looked like trouble in human form, 50-something, beer belly, eyes like spoiled milk. Greg stepped forward instinctively, but the man was already yanking Maya by the arm. "She was helping me," Greg said, trying to stay calm. "I'll pay her." Davison laughed. "Sure you will, Mr. Fancy Bike. $15 sound fair?" Greg pulled out 100 and placed it in Davison's greasy hand. "Her work's worth more." Davidson snatched the bill, didn't give a dime to Maya, just shoved her toward the truck. "Back to work, girl." Greg stood there, fists clenched, heart burning. He'd spent 15 years building an empire, becoming a man of power and purpose. But right now, watching Maya disappear behind that truck's rusted door, none of it meant a damn thing. He followed, at a distance. Quietly, the truck led him to a rundown roadside motel with a peeling sign, Davidson's Lodge. Through the grime-covered window of a diner across the street, Greg watched for hours. Watched as Maya carried water buckets, cleaned rooms, did dishes, took out trash. A child, doing grown-up work. He flagged the cook. "What's the deal over there?" The man hesitated, glancing toward the lodge. You didn't hear it from me, but Davidson runs that place like a prison. Takes in kids with no one to claim them. Says he's giving them a home. But we all see what's going on. Greg nodded slowly. Anyone ever report him? Sheriff's his cousin. Ain't nobody messing with Tom Davidson. That was about to change. Greg pulled out his phone, called Marcus Langford. His company's head of private security. I need everything on a man named Tom Davidson. Background, finances, history. And Marcus? Yes, sir. He's got my daughter. By nightfall, Greg Dalton had parked just beyond the trees near Davidson's lodge, watching the flicker of cheap fluorescent lights and the shadows that danced behind the curtain of Trailer 4. He knew Maya was in there, probably lying on a thin mattress, her tiny frame curled up in exhaustion, unaware that someone was finally coming for her. His phone buzzed. Marcus. I've got a preliminary file, Marcus said. Davidson's not just some run-down motel manager. He's been bouncing around Louisiana and Mississippi for years, operating under different LLCs. All dead ends. But the pattern's there. Child labor violations, suspected trafficking, under-the-table payments. And Greg, this guy's dirty. Deep dirty. Greg swallowed hard. I need a meeting with a federal prosecutor. Someone who'll take this seriously. You're in luck, Marcus replied. Jessica Tran, the U.S. Attorney's Office. She's already sniffing around Davidson. Someone filed a tip a few months ago, but they didn't have hard evidence. You get her what she needs and she'll bring the hammer. Greg didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his hotel room, far from the lodge, compiling everything he had. He called in favors from lawyers, former senators, nonprofit boards he donated to. Money was a tool, but so was regret. For 15 years, he had let the memory of Carmen haunt him, without ever checking if she needed help. Now he was staring that failure in the face. And she had curly hair, sharp eyes, and a mind like a steel trap. The next morning, Greg walked into the prosecutor's office with a suit on his back and fire in his chest. Jessica Tran was younger than he expected, with a calm intensity that reminded him of Carmen. You're Greg Dalton? She asked, eyeing the thick file he laid on her desk. I am. And the girl Davidson's exploiting, Maya, is my daughter. The room went silent. Jessica raised an eyebrow, but she didn't interrupt as he walked her through every detail. Photos, dates, receipts, statements from locals, and Marcus's report. She leaned forward, slowly tapping the folder. This is exactly what we needed. We've had eyes on Davidson, but without a witness or evidence, we were stuck. With this, we can move. Greg leaned in, his voice tight. I want Maya out. I don't care about protocol. If there's a raid, I'm going in with you. Jessica nodded. I can't promise everything will move overnight, but you have my word. This ends soon. Back at Davidson's lodge, things were already shifting. Greg, under the pretense of hiring Maya for mechanic work, returned with an offer Davidson couldn't ignore. $500, 0 cents a week to bring the girl out to his properties. Greg made it sound like a business opportunity, but it was a trap. He needed Maya close. Safe Davidson, predictably, but greed always revealed a man's weakness. But when Greg crouched again in front of Maya, asking if she wanted a life with learning, comfort, safety, he saw her hesitation. Not because she didn't want those things, but because she'd already learned she wasn't allowed to want anything better. It shattered something inside him. She didn't know she was his child yet, and Greg didn't dare tell her, not with Davidson breathing down their necks. But he knew then this wasn't just about revenge. This was about redemption. Later that night, Marcus called again. We've confirmed everything. Davidson's been receiving monthly payments from known predators. Sheriff's in on it. Jessica's team is preparing the raid. But Greg? There's something else. Davidson has a file on Maya. Photos, reports, medical history. He knew who she was. Greg's blood ran cold. He knew? Marcus's voice was grim. He's been waiting to cash her in. That changed everything. The timeline was gone. No more waiting until Thursday. Greg told Jessica they had to move now, tonight if possible. She agreed, and within 2 hours, federal agents were rolling down the highway under the cover of darkness. At exactly 5:58 a.m., the lodge was surrounded. SWAT teams poured in from both entrances. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Davidson stumbled out of Trailer 3 in his robe, mid-yell, only to be slammed against a police car and cuffed. His cries of innocence were drowned out by the whir of camera shutters and the rustle of legal documents being served. Greg didn't wait. He rushed to the back trailer, the one where Maya had been sleeping. The agents let him through. Inside, he found her, curled up, frightened, clutching that same bucket of cleaning supplies. "Maya," he said, kneeling beside her. "Do you remember me? The man with the Harley?" She blinked at him, eyes wide. "Are they going to take me somewhere else again?" Greg took a shaky breath. "No, sweetheart. You're not going anywhere. You're coming with me, and I need to tell you something. About your mom." He pulled out an old photo from his wallet. Carmen and him. Young, smiling, hopeful. Maya stared at it, then her fingers touched the photo. "You? You knew her?" He nodded. "I loved her, Maya. I loved her more than anything, and I made a terrible mistake. I left when I should have stayed, but she gave me something, someone, worth fighting for. You?" Maya didn't speak for a long time. Then, in a voice barely more than a whisper, "You're my dad." Greg felt the tears come, unstoppable now. "Yes, I am, and I swear to you, I'll never leave you again." Outside, Davidson was being loaded into a federal vehicle, screaming about conspiracies and betrayal. The moment he spotted Greg holding Maya, his face went pale. "You," Davidson spat, "you set me up." Greg didn't flinch. "No, Tom, you did that yourself. I just lit the match." Jessica Tran walked up with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Davidson, would you like to explain this text message? Client wants someone younger this time. The girl's almost ready." Davidson paled even further. "You don't understand," Jessica cut him off. "No, you don't understand. You're done." Greg watched them take Davidson away, then glanced down at Maya. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. "Then let's ride." He lifted her onto the Harley, this time not as a mechanic, not as a burden, but as a doll. And they roared down the road, leaving behind the place where innocence was stolen, and riding toward a future that was finally hers. 2 years later, the place that once echoed with cries and slammed doors had transformed into something extraordinary. Where rusted trailers and broken spirits once stood, the Carmen Brooks Learning Center now towered with bright classrooms, vocational labs, and a workshop that smelled of oil, sweat, and hope. Greg Dalton had turned his guilt into action, his pain into purpose. The site of his greatest regret was now the birthplace of his greatest legacy. Maya, now 11, walked confidently through the main workshop in a blue mechanic's jumpsuit with her name stitched in white thread above the chest pocket. Her toolbox, custom-built to fit her small but capable hands, clicked with every step. Around her, 6 other children, foster kids, runaways, former victims, gathered around an open engine mounted on a steel table. "An engine," she explained, wiping a spot of grease off her cheek, "doesn't care how rich you are or what your skin looks like. If you treat it right, it runs. If you ignore it, it falls apart, just like people." The other kids nodded. Some smiled. Most were still learning how to do that. From the office window above, Greg watched his daughter with quiet pride. He had built buildings that touched skylines and contracts that changed economies. But this girl, this curious, determined, unbreakable girl, was the greatest structure he'd ever helped create. His phone buzzed. It was Marcus with the monthly updates. "Davidson got moved to solitary again," Marcus reported. "Inmate attack. That's the 3rd time. He's petitioning for a transfer out of state." Greg didn't even blink, let him rot. And Sheriff Morrison? Bankrupt. Lost his house, his wife, his badge. Last I heard, he's working overnight security at a warehouse. No department wants a cop with that kind of stain. Greg nodded, but didn't gloat. He wasn't interested in revenge for the sake of pride. Davidson and Morrison were collateral. The real victory wasn't putting men in cages. It was opening doors for children who had none. There was a soft knock on the office door. Maya stood in the doorway, slightly taller now, her curls tamed by a red bandana. She stepped inside with a quiet confidence that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. "Can I talk to you, Dad?" Every time she said that word, Greg felt his heart swell. Of course. She sat across from him, placed her toolbox gently on the floor, and looked down at her shoes for a second. "I was thinking about Mom today, about Carmen. I think she'd be proud of this, of everything we've done. We turned something terrible into something that helps people." Greg stood and walked around the desk. He pulled her into a hug. She would be more than proud. She'd be amazed. "You took what happened to you and turned it into something stronger than anger. Compassion. You remind me of her every day." That afternoon, Greg stood on a stage built in the heart of the center's courtyard, speaking to a crowd of families, social workers, donors, and alumni of the program. It was the graduation ceremony for the first official class of youth mechanics from the Carmen Brooks Center. 2 years ago, Greg began, "I found my daughter in a place no child should ever be. I found her cleaning rooms she wasn't old enough to enter, working jobs no child should have to know. But I didn't just find a victim. I found an engineer, a leader, a spark." The audience was still listening. And what I learned from her is this: sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. It's building something so good, so strong that no predator can ever touch it. That's what this place is, a declaration that children are not commodities, that love is not weakness, and that every mistake can be redeemed if you fight hard enough to make it right. He stepped back, and Maya walked to the podium. She stood on a wooden box to reach the mic. "I used to think I was trash," she said plainly, "not with drama but with truth, that I didn't matter, that nobody cared where I went or what happened to me, but someone showed up, not because he had to, but because he chose to, and that changed everything." She looked directly at Greg. "Dad, you didn't just save me, you made me believe I could save myself." The crowd rose to its feet. Later that night, as the sun dipped behind the converted trailers and the warm glow of string lights filled the courtyard, Greg and Maya sat on the steps of the workshop. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if the Harley hadn't broken down that day?" she asked. Greg nodded. "Every day." "But it did," she smiled, "and now we fix things." "Yes," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "Now we fix things." Behind them, the sign for the Carmen Brooks Center lit up one letter at a time, and just like that, a story that started with heartbreak and silence ended in steel, light, and legacy. Because some children don't need miracles. They just need one person to show up and refuse to leave.